as I said, I've got a lot of content to get through today. Lots of stuff I want to talk to you about low tox living. And, I feel like, there's not going to be a lot of revolution in terms of this talk. Much of what we're going to talk about, you will have heard before. I know that you guys are a proactive tribe. I know that you guys are already pretty passionate about health and wellness, and that's why you're following me. And, many of you I know are members of my Healthy Lifestyle Choices Facebook group, where I share lots of this sort of information on a regular basis. And so I know there's going to be some repetition here, and I'm totally okay with that. All right. I know there'll be some new stuff for some of you, which will be awesome. But I think there'll also just be a lot of great reminders. And so, so often with this stuff, it's not about what we know, it's about what we do. And so hopefully there'll be just little bits that you'll pick up. And I constantly do. Like, I can tell you, I will do the same thing myself. That there will be stuff that I go through and that I have gone through as I've been preparing for tonight, where it's like, oh, you know what? I've slackened off on that a little bit, or I haven't been doing that lately, or I used to do that. Why don't I do that anymore? And just, little fine tunes that you can do, which is why it's great to do these sort of things on a regular basis, and just to have a little top up and a little reminder. And just to be, I always talk about Kaizen, small steps of continual and never-ending improvement. And, if you can just get one or two of those little things to stick each time, then you can end up being in a year's time, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, a lot further ahead than you thought you would be. Rahani says that sounds like me. Good. I'm glad it's not just me, Rahani. That makes me feel better. So thank you for that. So I've got lots of different topics I want to talk about tonight. So I've actually got 18 different topics I'm going to talk about detoxing and low tox living. I've actually got 18 topics I'm going to talk about low tox living. And then I've got 6 different topics I'm going to talk about in terms of detoxing as well. So once again, bear with me if I go a little bit quick through some of these. If there is additional stuff, if there's anything you want more clarification on, then by all means, as the girls are already doing, just put a comment in and feel free to ask. If there's anything you want me to go more in depth in, or if you think about it later and you think, oh, I wish I'd asked him this, or I wish I'd asked him that, then definitely head into my Healthy Lifestyle Choices Facebook group. In fact, I've just realized I should, I do this every time, right? I should be more prepared and have the link here for you. So I'll actually just grab the link for that for you now. So that if you want to do that, that's the best spot. Like, if you want to ask me questions, if you want me to help lead you through some stuff, have a little bit of mentoring from me, it's a totally free group. You can just jump into Healthy Lifestyle Choices with Brett Hill. I'll put it here in the comments. And you can actually just join that group for free. And that's a great spot. So, anything you want to go into more depth in, that's a great spot to do it. All right. So let's get into it. Let's talk about low tox living. And the first spot I'm going to start with is, as I said, for many people, a bit of an obvious one, and it's organic food, right? It's getting the chemicals out of your food. We know that there are incredible usage of, pesticides and herbicides and fungicides and fertilizers in our foods. And we know that many of those are bad for our health, and some of them are very bad for our health. If you're in this group, there's every chance you've heard Cindy O'Meara talk about glyphosate as just one example of that, and the devastating effects it can have on people's health. You may even have heard her family story about DDT, I think it is, and how that impacted on her family and the health of her family. And there's no doubt that in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, we'll be sharing similar stories about different chemicals that we potentially don't even realize are a problem yet. Okay, so, I think there's a lot of value to organic food and organic farming and regenerative farming in terms of not only the health of us as individuals, but I think also in terms of the health of our planet. I think what we're doing in terms of degenerating soils to the point where we're then having to add back in artificial fertilizers to try and have the nutrients there so we can even grow food at all, let alone nutritious food, says a lot about the way we're damaging our planet. And so I think there are definitely, organic, biodynamic, regenerative ways that we can do that farming, whether that's animal products or plant products, because I think we can have a healthy planet by doing both. Then I think, looking towards that sort of organic food is a good idea as much as you can, right? And so I know that right now, there are a lot of you are struggling, and so from a financial perspective, the last couple of years have been pretty tough for a lot of people. There are probably people on this call who have lost their jobs as a result of mandates and the like over the last couple of years, and just changes and challenges over the last couple of years. And inflation is a bit nutty right now, right? Like, we all know petrol prices have just gone mental. And so for many of us, the cost of living is making doing something like organic food challenging. Now, we can easily argue and say that the expense of organic food is less than the expense of health impacts later on, and that may well be true. But if you literally don't have the money to buy it right now, then what you want to look at is getting the best bang for your buck, right? And so if you look at, we talk about the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. Many of you will have heard of those before. If you haven't heard of them, I'm going to go just quickly run through them now for you, but you can easily Google that and find them everywhere. They're well shared on the internet, right? But essentially, the Dirty Dozen are the dozen foods, particularly fruits and vegetables, that tend to have the most chemicals on them. And so the idea being that if you do want to go organic, or if you do want to grow your own, then these might be a good spot to start. Okay, so the Dirty Dozen: strawberries, spinach, they've put kale, collard, and mustard greens together, so it's kind of a bit cheeky. It's more than a dozen. Nectarines, apples, grapes, cherries, peaches, pears, bell and hot peppers, celery, and tomatoes. So, as I said, those are things you may want to think about either buying organic or growing yourself, right? I know for us at the moment, we have got pears and nashi pears absolutely coming out our ears at the moment, and apples, because it's that time of year where they're just falling off of the tree, and we're, begging friends to come around and take some. December, we've got cherries at our place. We're very lucky in terms of having a well-established garden that previous owners had planted for us, which is very lucky. But we're also being active about that, and where we can, planting new stuff and adding to that, and trying to make sure we've got stuff all year round, so that we can get organic stuff from our own garden, that's going to allow us to have less of that toxic load, and also save us money. We're not having to buy organic food. In fact, we're not having to buy any food. We made a delicious pear crumble for dessert the other night. We used walnuts from our trees, because we do have a lot of walnut trees, and our neighbors have a lot of walnut trees, and the kids and I had lots of fun picking them. That was actually really cool, and cracking them open and all that sort of stuff. And so we used our pears and our walnuts, and that was great. It was free, essentially. It was delicious, and it was low tox, which is really cool. All right, so those are the Dirty Dozen. The Clean 15. So these are things that you can lean towards if you want to, because they don't have as much chemical on them, or in the case of many of these, they have kind of thicker skins, and so you peel the chemicals off to a degree, right? Obviously some of it gets through, but things like avocados, sweet corn, pineapple, onions, papaya, sweet peas, eggplants, asparagus, broccoli, cabbage, kiwis, cauliflower, mushrooms, honeydew melons, and rock melon, right? So those are things, once again, if you sort of think of it as far as the foods that have those thicker skins that you're going to remove and peel off, then they tend to go a little bit better as well. And then Rahani's just beaten me to the punch here. Rahani, you're onto it. Rahani says, I soak and wash fruits, veggies, and salads in a mixture of bicarb, soda, and vinegar. And I 100% agree. That's exactly what I was going to say next, Rahani, is that if you can't do that, and you do want to have some of those foods that are in the Dirty Dozen, or even if they aren't in the Dirty Dozen, to be perfectly honest, but you want to get rid of some of those chemicals and some of that toxicity. Obviously, you're never going to get rid of all of it. Some of it will have sunk in, but you can use a combination of salt, bicarb, and vinegar. So, Rahani's using bicarb and vinegar. You can add a little bit of salt to that as well, which is meant to help as well. You can soak them for around about 20 minutes, and then give them a little bit of a scrub, and that will actually make a big difference as well. So I know that's a little bit time consuming, but if you want to remove some of that toxic, or reduce some of that toxicity without having to go the extra money of buying organic foods, then that's a way to do it. Okay. So number 2 is fresh air. All right. And so, to a degree, depending on where you live, fresh air can be easier or harder. There are lots of ways you can go about doing that. One of the simplest things you can do to keep the air fresh is clean out the filter in your air conditioner. One of the other easy things you can do is open a window. Once again, depending on where you live, right? If you live in the middle of the city, in the middle of the CBD, And opening your window might not necessarily be a good idea, right? That might actually be letting in more stuff, and you might be better off keeping the window closed and having the air conditioner with a good quality filter in. But you also might then want to focus on where you spend your time when you're not at work or on the weekends, right? So we're really lucky here in Adelaide. Everything's pretty close, right? So if you want to go up to the hills and go for a bushwalk and be surrounded by gums and some beautiful, natural eucalyptus oils in the air, then you can do that. And that's, for most people, that's 10 or 20 minutes away, and so we're really lucky. Or you can go to the beach and be sort of doing the same thing, walking along the beach, right? So getting some fresh air is a really good idea. All right. The third one you can do is filtering your water. Okay. So, and I think this is almost regardless of where your water's coming from, right? So we are in the Adelaide Hills. We don't have any mains water, which in Adelaide is a bit of a blessing, right? Because mains water in Adelaide, being the kind of the end of the Murray, I'll say it. I was going to say something. I was going to say it more crudely, but we're at the end of the Murray River, and so we tend to have everybody's chemicals and pesticides from all of the irrigation that's happened all the way down the Murray River, as well as their erosion and runoff and hard metals, and the Murray water is not that great by the time it gets to us. And sure, they process it and they filter it to a degree. They add chlorine, they add chemicals to it. Fluoride to the water, right? So Adelaide water is not great, and so if you're in Adelaide and you're drinking Adelaide water and bathing in Adelaide water, then you really want to think about how you can go about filtering it, right? Many people will have at least a filter for their tap, or at least a filter for their jug, right? Obviously, there's different levels you can go to with this. Most of the jug filters are pretty basic. I know that. I think blank is their name now. I can't think of the name of our filter. Anyway, we have a desktop filter, and that's great. And that, I'll think of it in just a second. It's just, I'm having an absolute blank. Someone will even tell me, because you guys probably know what filter I've got. But we have got a desktop filter, and that's excellent. I know that they do tap filters, and they do shower filters, right? And I think that's a really good idea if you are having particularly that sort of tap water, because that can be really detrimental to you. So you really need to think about that. If you really want to go the whole hog and you own your own house, or even if you don't own your own house and you can put it into the lease agreement that you can kind of take it with you, you could go for a reverse osmosis system, which then does the whole water, right? And so thank you, Shannon. A Zazen water filter. Those girls are going to kill me if they realize that I've forgotten the Zazen water filter. They've been such wonderful supporters of us over the years, particularly on the Wellness Couch. And it's a wonderful product, like I know I have one, and just about everyone I know in the health and wellness world has one, because it's a wonderful product. So, and a great company. So apologies, girls, if you're listening in, and thank you, Shannon, for helping me out. So the Zazen is great. Once again, they do have shower filters, and they do have the bench top filter, which is really good. And so even though we have, in our place, we are rainwater, but it comes off a bit of a dingy shed, and I'm sure by the time, and we're surrounded by orchards, which I know get sprayed, and so and there's a lot of dust from the road and all those other things. So even so, we often will still run the water through the Zazen just to give it that extra bit of cleaning and purification. And we haven't gone the whole hog of going the reverse osmosis system for that reason, because we are on the rainwater, which I feel isn't. If I was on town water, I'd probably be thinking about going that way, and I'd probably be thinking about doing something to remineralize the water a little bit after it's been through the reverse osmosis system, because that almost purifies it too much, which is another consideration for you as well. So have a think about your water, how you're filtering your water, and where you're getting your water from. Once again, I know if you're in Adelaide, like if I go to a restaurant in Adelaide and they serve water that hasn't been filtered and it sits in the middle, from the middle of the table, I can smell the chlorine, right? It's amazing that growing up I never smelt it, because we used to drink that water all the time, and now that we don't drink that water, it's amazing how strong it smells, right? And obviously chlorine is there to kill bugs. You want to keep your bugs in your gut because they're really important for your health. So that's not a good idea. You want to get rid of that if you can. Number 4 is reading labels. All right. Now, once again, Cindy O'Meara, who many of you will know is a big proponent of this, is making sure you read the labels. Don't just focus on how much fat, protein, and carbohydrates is in your food. Have a look at what is actually in there. What are the ingredients? What's going into it? Is it whole, real foods? Is it man-made products? Is it chemicals? Once again, if it's organic, that's great because then you get rid of the additional chemicals that get sprayed onto it. But you also don't want a lot of those chemical man-made products and oils and additives and flavors and colorings and emulsifiers and all of those things that get added into your food. So definitely read your labels, see what's in it, make it yourself as much as you possibly can, grow it yourself as much as you possibly can. But when you do have to buy the stuff from the shops, make sure you read the labels, see what's in it, and as much as possible, make sure it's just whole, real, unprocessed or as little processed as possible food, and that's going to set you up in, to a large degree, heading in the right direction. Okay. So number 5 I mentioned before is homemade, and homemade can go for your food, right? Is making sure as much as possible you're making your food at home, because it is going to have way less sugar, it's going to have way less additives, it's going to have way less chemicals, it's going to have way less processing, all of those things. So it's definitely going to be lower tox. It's almost certainly going to be lower tox if it's made from home versus if it's made in a shop, right? So just bear that in mind. You have so much more control if you make it yourself. And, as much as we've just said, read the labels, I know from speaking to Cindy O'Meara that, when she goes to source the products for her Changing Habits foods, so often what it says on the label isn't the whole story, right? There are so many rules, but if it's not up to a certain level, you don't have to mention it, if it's not, and so there are loopholes even within reading the labels that mean that you don't get the full story as you do if you're making it yourself from home, right? So that's homemade. Getting out into nature, right? Obviously, in terms of low tox living, we know the toxicity. I mean, even just the fluoro lights here of being in the office, the computer's right in front of me, so there's EMF radiation coming from that. There's paint on the walls that's going to be emitting. There's plastics that are going to be emitting. There's so many things when we're in this unnatural environment. And I know for many of us, that is a necessity of our modern lives, whether that's your home, whether that's your work, whether that's your school, whether that's your kids' school. There are just these unnatural environments that we need to spend time in. However, there's a lot of research out there now around the benefits of getting away from that. And it's fascinating. The Japanese do a lot of research into this, and they've gone to the point where they now try and bring as many natural elements in as they can. They use a lot of essential oils even in their hospital system, which is awesome. And they're from the forest. They talk about forest bathing, and it can be like a doctor's recommendation in Japan that you need to have a certain number of hours per week of forest bathing because you need to get out into nature, right? So Rahani's just agreeing with me. That's great. So getting out into nature, breathing the fresh air, breathing in those essential oils, looking at that green tone, which is very relaxing for your nervous system. This is all going to help your body detox. So getting out into nature as much as you can, even, it doesn't have to be the forest, it can be the beach, it can be, just getting out into nature is a really good idea. Number 7 is choosing where you live. Okay, and so once again, this is not a quick fix, right? This is not something you can necessarily change tomorrow, but I think it's something you can be really mindful of. You've heard me talk a little bit already about the fact that we are blessed to be in the Adelaide Hills. I'm constantly delighted that we chose to move there. I moved to the Adelaide Hills in a short space of time from living in Potts Point in Sydney, in a tiny little apartment with not even a balcony, let alone an outdoor area, in an absolute urban environment. And within the space of, 6 months or a year, went from there to living on an acre in the Adelaide Hills, and have never for a moment regretted it, in terms of a lot of these things, fresh air, clean water, homegrown food, space, right? Being away from a lot of the modern pollution, being a clearer air, definitely, all of these reasons, so choosing where you live is something really important. You're going to spend a lot of time there. And so it's really important that you love where you live, but also that where you live is good for you. And so that also doesn't necessarily just have to be your property. It may be that you have a great reserve across the road. It might be a great park across the road. It might be an oval across the road where you like to go and kick the footy, but whatever's going to get you out and about, choosing where you live and being conscious about the lifestyle that where you live is going to enable for you and how that's going to impact on all of these other elements of toxicity in your life is a really wise idea. Okay. Number 8 is get an EMF reader. Okay, so one of the things that Steph and I did when we were house hunting, and particularly when we sort of got down to the last couple of houses we were looking at, is that we actually were able to hire an EMF reader from the government. It was either the council or the government, all right? And so we were able to go and hire, for free, I believe it was, an EMF reader for about a week. And then go around. So the house we live in now, in fact, does actually have a power line that goes across the top of it, right? It's only going to one house, which is a house up behind us. But we do have a power line that sort of comes down the street, and then it actually cuts up over our property, up in the air, kind of actually quite close-ish to where my son's caravan is now, which he uses as his bedroom. And so I'm so glad we checked this because I would have been worried about it otherwise. And so we were able to go into the house and have a look. We were able to check with the EMF reader the readings from that. Fortunately, that is it's a low voltage line. It's a low power line because it's only just going to one house. And so by the time that gets from where it is down to the ground, the levels are really just baseline. It doesn't have an impact. We were able to see though in our house, where the impact of, for example, the fridge is, where the impact of the power box is. We haven't done it yet since we've got our solar installed, but I'd be curious to sort of go and have a look and sort of see where the impact of the solar installation is. And that allowed us then to sort of start thinking about where we wanted to put the couch, and so we put it in the corner rather than where the back of the fridge is, because we realized how much of an impact it has. We were also able to see, we tried everything out. We were able to check, how far away our phone needed to be from our bed in order for us not to get EMF at night. And it's actually not that far. We realized it was about 1.5 meters away from your head it needed to be. And then it was really just back to background radiation levels, And so, but that was sort of comforting to know that, it was a good reminder to be like, we always make sure we chuck it at least that far away. So we're not having that EMF too close to our head and getting impacted by that. So getting an EMF reader is a really good idea. Number 9 is adding plants, right? One of the simplest ways you can detox your home. And this is, BJ O'Sullivan has just said, a beautiful garden to rest and relax. And absolutely, for so many reasons, the garden, you're getting fresh oxygen. As I said, you're getting those green tones, which are really relaxing for your nervous system. You're getting those smells and those essential oils in the air. And so they're purifying the air. Many of the plants will actually help to purify the air. So as well as doing that in your garden, then as much as possible, try and bring those inside, whether it is your office. And I actually don't have a plant at the moment in my office, this particular room, because it's a bit dark and nothing quite survives. But as soon as you head out that door, we do have lots of plants that are helping in that regard. So we've made sure we bring some life in to help de-stress and to help detox our practice, which is great. Number 10 is skincare and personal hygiene products. Now, I'm not going to go into any particular brands, but there are lots of different brands out there in terms of your skincare, in terms of your makeups, your perfumes, all of those sort of things. But what I will say is, be really conscious of choosing your brands, reading the ingredients, but probably to a large degree, choosing your brands can actually be more important than reading your ingredients in this regard, because the rules around what they need to put on the packaging of these sort of products in Australia are pretty poor. They're pretty lax. Okay, so what you really need to do is you need to be really conscious about choosing your brands. You need to be really aware of your brands. You need to speak to friends who are into this sort of stuff. And I know that if you go into, once again, my Healthy Lifestyle Choices group, where I've got the link there, and ask these questions, there are going to be so many of the girls in there who use, and guys, I'm sure, who use different brands and recommend different brands and have done a lot of research into this, right? So I'm not going to go into any particular brands, but I will say that, essential oils are wonderful in this regard, right? So, just using, and you don't need much, right? Just a couple of drops of an essential oil can make a massive difference, whether on your, in terms of scent, in terms of de-stressing, in terms of affecting your moods. They're just wonderful, right? So, what we use in our house most of the time is a combination of different essential oils and coconut oil, or a carrier oil like a macadamia oil or something like that, right? So it can be as simple as that. So in terms of cleaning, all right, there are, once again, I'm not going to go into all of the different recipes that you can make for cleaning, right? Because there are so many different ways you can do it in terms of whether it's an oven cleaner, whether it's a window cleaner, whether it's a toilet cleaner, right? But safe to say that you can create your own cleaning products in your home, right? I know in my practice here, in terms of cleaning down the tables, it's essentially just some essential oils, some tea tree oil, some peppermint oil, diluted in water, and that's what we use because we know they just have wonderful, antibacterial properties, and that's a great way to clean down the tables and to, remove any grime that's on there and to make sure that's nice and clean for the next person coming along, and it smells nice and it's de-stressing, which is great, right? So essentially by using various combinations of bicarb, vinegar and essential oils, and once again, I'm not going to go into all the different recipes for this because you can easily Google and find all the different recipes and how to do this, right? So if it's your oven, you're going to need to use a slightly different recipe. You're probably going to need to soak it for a bit longer so that it actually gets rid of some of that more difficult grime. But once again, you can go online and find these. It just suffice to say that it can be done, and it can be done pretty easily, and they can be pretty effective. Sometimes it does take a little bit more elbow grease than the products you're used to growing up with, but I think it's worth it, right? Number 12, I want to talk about food storage cups. Castile, yes, thank you, BJ. That was actually the other thing I had on my list. I don't know why I didn't have it here. Was Castile soap. Yes, and that certainly comes up in many of those recipes. So that can certainly be the ingredient in all of those cleaning products as well. In terms of food storage, cups and straws, once again, we know that from a toxicity perspective, that plastics and the microplastics that get leached from them and the estrogenic effects they can have on our bodies and on our hormone balance are just not good for us. And so we have so much plastic exposure in our lives already. We want to minimize that as much as possible. So even if you're buying food that's already in plastics, or in products that are lined with plastics in terms of tin cans and things like that, then I really encourage you to, as soon as you get it home, to transfer it. The easiest thing to do, we do in our house, is we keep our coconut oil jars, because we go through bucket loads of coconut oil. We keep our coconut oil jars, and so then, everything we get, whether it's nuts, whether it's cacao, whether it's, sultanas, whatever the products we've got, they all go into those glass jars because we know that glass is a much more stable environment, right? In a similar way, we use a lot of ceramic, particularly our ceramic cookware, because that's a low tox environment. It's not the non-stick pans that leach, and they do, as much as they say they don't. We know that they say, oh no, it doesn't get into your food, but it's like, well, okay, I know a non-stick pan, if you've had it for a few years, it looks like it's all scraped away. It's not working as well as it used to anymore. Where did that go? I guarantee you some of it went into your food, right? So using glass, using ceramics, using some stainless steel for drink bottles and the like is a good way to go in terms of reducing toxicity. And once again, especially anything you're going to store for a period of time, really try and make sure that's in something stable like glass or ceramic. Like we prefer the glass because it's easy to see. You know what you've got, and you can check when you're getting ready to do your shopping list. Okay. Number 13 is air fresheners. I find air fresheners gross. I've got to be honest. Whether they're in the car or in the home, or you see it in people's, workplaces or cafes, and they're just like spraying out chemicals on a regular basis into the environment. I find it astounding that people still do that. Just be really mindful of the chemicals that exist in those, and get rid of those as much as you can. Open the windows, let some fresh air in, spray a little bit of essential oil, and you're going to have a much nicer, bring some plants and some flowers into your home, and you're going to have a much nicer smelling home, I guarantee you, than you're going to get from those air fresheners. So try and keep away from those as much as you can. Number 14 is pesticides and herbicides, right? And so, and fertilizers, right? So this is about being really mindful about the way you do your gardening. And so number one on that, I would say, is companion planting. I've got a great book at home. I wish I brought it in here, called the Companion Planting Guide. If someone reminds me inside the Healthy Lifestyle Choices group, when I get home, I'll take a photo of it and I'll to share with you guys so you can see what it looks like and you can go hunt it down. It's great, and it talks about what plants you should plant with what. You plant your garlic underneath your roses because the garlic actually helps keep the aphids away. You plant certain plants next to each other because one of them needs one nutrient which the other one releases, and the other one needs the nutrient that one releases. They fertilize each other, they look after each other, and so the more you do, the more you're conscious of how you plant and where you plant, the better you'll go. I know this weekend, being Easter in Adelaide, is when Sophie Thompson of ABC Gardening Australia has her open garden. I must admit, I've never really watched the TV show, but I have been to her garden multiple times, and it is phenomenal. And the way she does this in terms of her companion planting and using the plants and using the animals, whether it's the ducks or the chickens or the bees or the bugs, encouraging that real ecosystem approach to her garden, so that she can minimize the amount that she uses any sort of, or in fact, I don't think she uses any sort of herbicides or pesticides or fertilizers. She chooses the right plants. Her approach, which I always love, is she says that, she creates the right environment for the plant. She looks after it for the first 6 months till it can get established. And then if it doesn't survive from there, then it's not meant to be. It's not right for the climate. It's not right for the environment. So, why push uphill the whole time trying to support something that's just kind of not meant to be there? So, it's funny. My dad was giving me grief about our front lawn the other day, because at this time of year, our front lawn looks like rubbish, because I'm not of a mind to use a lot of resources maintaining a lawn in summer in Australia. Doesn't make sense to me, right? Like it's water intensive. It would be, I'd have to spray it, I'd have to weed it, I'd have to fertilize it, I have to mow it regularly, and I just don't want to do that, and I don't think that's good for the environment in any way, shape or form. So I just kind of let it go, and once the rain hits in the next couple of weeks, it'll come back, it'll be green as green, and it'll be totally fine, and I'll be mowing it more than I wish I was. But right now, I just let it go, and I'm okay with that, right? So companion planting is really good. Encouraging the natural predators. We know that, for example, if it's the aphids on your roses, that the ladybugs eat those, and so the more you can do to create an environment where they're going to be happy and not kill them with your sprays, then the more likely you're going to be to do that. You can, once again, in the garden, use homemade and natural ingredients. I know for some of the plants, we've been using a natural white oil. And so you can make that in your own home. It's not entirely natural as I would think it. Like, it does have a little bit of detergent in it, which I was like, oh, that's not. But we have a pretty low tox detergent. That's like our natural detergent that we have, and we made it up using that. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what else was in it. But you can make, if not natural, a lot more natural ingredients. For when you do need to just sort of get some bugs under control, if that's happening in your garden. The other thing is, in terms of weeding, doing it by hand, or, my favorite is I have one of those little butane flamethrowers, and that's the best way to do the weeding. That is the most satisfying way to weed the garden, because I go through and do it with that instead. And so I don't have to use any sprays. I certainly don't use those path sprays that hang around for years and years and cause toxicity in your home. So I don't want to do that. Yeah, so I use the flamethrower, and I'm sure butane isn't 100% environmentally friendly either, but I feel like it's a much better solution for my home and for my family than spraying around chemicals that are going to hang around on the paths and in the garden and in the soil for years to come. So that's what we do there. Number 15 is health products, right? So being conscious of the products that you use for your health, and in particular, I guess, medications. Making sure that all of the medications you are taking are absolutely necessary. We know from the research that many Australians are taking medications that are no longer necessary for them because they haven't been reviewed in an appropriate way. So, doing everything you can in terms of lifestyle and prevention so that you don't end up on medications, making sure that all the medications you do take are absolutely necessary, trying alternative approaches before you go down the medication route, is a really good idea to help reduce your toxicity. I think a big part of that is understanding symptoms, understanding that symptoms are there as a sign from your body to help keep your body healthy, in many cases to help stop you from doing stupid things, in the example of pain. And so we don't always need to be eradicating symptoms. Fever can be a really useful thing. It's one of your body's lines of defenses in terms of getting rid of a virus is creating a fever. And so we don't necessarily need to go straight to eradicating that fever. We need to have an understanding of why it's there and what your body is trying to do and how we can support your body in order to overcome these things naturally rather than constantly fighting against the symptoms that may be presenting. As I said, we can use naturally alternatives. Obviously, I'm a big fan of chiropractic as a natural healing art, as a way of removing interference and allowing the full health expression of your body so it can heal and it can detoxify as well as humanly possible. But in the same way, by using diet, by using natural therapies, there are ways that we can have less toxicity in our lives when we're combating whatever's going on, whatever health challenges we're dealing with. And as I said, preventative lifestyles, I mentioned already. All right. In terms of food, coming back to food again, small wild caught fish. I really should have put this further up the list when I was talking about food. I'm jumping all over the place a bit here, but if you are going to have fish, trying to minimize the mercury, obviously, in our environment, which comes into perhaps with some of the medications as well. But making sure that we're minimizing the mercury. Particularly from fish. Fish are really great for us because of the omega-3s and the EPA and the DHA that's wonderful for our brains in particular. But making sure that, or being conscious of the fact that small wild-caught fish are the best alternative in terms of mercury. It's essentially the further up the food chain it is, the more other fish it's eaten, the more the accumulation of the mercury occurs. And so we also know that many of the farm fish are now fed stuff that wouldn't naturally be in their diet, including colors and flavorings and all sorts of weird stuff that gets put into some of the salmon in particular. So wild caught, line caught is a really great way to go and is a lot better for the environment. Cookware I've already touched on, in terms of using stainless and ceramic cookware as opposed to non-stick cookware or cast cookware. Now I'm going to have a blank again, and you guys are going to have to help me out again. But the cast iron cookware we've got is fantastic, and it's really, there's something nice about it. Like, it's got a really sort of traditional, homely feel to it. And they're just like, they have like a lifetime warranty. The idea is that you pass it down to future generations. So not only from the perspective of it being healthy and clean to cook with and not adding crap into your food, it's also the idea that it's not polluting the environment. Oh, thank you, Steffi. There you go. Welcome, Steffi. Solid Technics, which is a great company. They make amazing quality products. I often have a joke with Mark, who makes them, or at least is the inventor of Solid Techniques, because his previous company, which was called Fury Knives, I won a set of Fury knives on Wheel of Fortune in about the year 2000. So there is a video around somewhere of me on Wheel of Fortune, just so you know. And I still have those knives in my kitchen some 22 years later, and they are still in fantastic condition. They still stay sharp. I've got the sharpening stone that I use to sharpen them. but they're just a wonderful quality product. And I think that's a testament to the stuff that he makes and to those solid Technique pans. So that's a great way to go. We also have the Le Creuset ceramic pots and pans in our house, and once again, they're wonderful. They're just really durable, last forever. You know, they're low tox. They're a great way to go about it. And then we use a lot of wooden utensils, stainless utensils, and silicone utensils. Avoiding the plastic. We did actually have a plastic spatula, and then we realized that it was just like, it was putting plastic into our food. Like, it was really gross. I mean, we should have gotten rid of it ages ago. I don't know why we still had it. It was just, one of those things that you finally get around to doing it, and you're like, why didn't we chuck this thing out 10 years ago? Anyway, so using wooden utensils and silicone utensils is a much healthier way to go in terms of your cooking as well. And then 18 is clothing. And so being mindful of using natural fibers and natural products for your clothing is another way to reduce some of the toxicity in your life. And I think also, sourcing more local sourced products. We know that the chemicals that get used in other countries in terms of when they're packaging and preparing and cleaning aren't always the best, So being mindful of that, you definitely want to make sure you give them a wash before you wear them. And perhaps even, I would say hang them out in the line and give them a bit of sun before you wear them is probably a really good idea. One of the best detoxes, one of the best natural cleaners, one of the best natural antiviral is just the sun. Getting out on a nice sunny day and hanging your clothes out there makes a big difference. So try and do that as much as you can, rather than using the dryer, which is going to use up your power, which is super expensive at the moment. It's going to make your house moldy if you don't have great ventilation. Try and get it out of there into the sun. It's going to be so much healthier than using the dryer. So those are my low tox living, my 18 low tox living tips. Hopefully they all make sense to you. I'm sure almost all of them were things that you'd heard before, but I'm also sure that amongst that, there'll be some great reminders in there as well. Steffi's just pointed out cotton, even though it is natural, is one of the most sprayed crops. So once again, you want to make sure that you go organic where you can, give it a good clean where you can, and put it out in the sun where you can as well. Shannon says, tips for controlling recurring mold in a new build house. Yeah, that's a tricky one, Shannon. I mean, that can be a really expensive, complicated job to get rid of it. I mean, obviously, the simplest tips are try and get as much airflow as you can, try and get as much sun as you can. They're your two best friends in that regard. Try and keep everything as dry as you can. I would be looking into building biology. There's a whole science around that now, around how you can look after your home. You may even want to get Nicole Bildsma is the person who's created a whole community around building biology and has certified practitioners now who can come out and actually investigate your home and give you tips on how to do that. But without coming in and seeing your home, and probably without the knowledge of being a building biologist, I probably don't know enough to be able to give you the best tips on that. But certainly, just be mindful that many of the mold removers don't really get rid of the mold. They just kind of bleach it and cover over it and let it keep going. And so, a bit of elbow grease, a bit of sunshine, a bit of air, a bit of drying out. I know Steffi had recently some sort of crystals hanging in our bathroom, which were absorbing the moisture from the air and helping prevent the mold as well. I can't remember what they were, Steffi, but I'm sure she'll comment on that in a second as well. That may well be another option there in terms of the mold too. So there's a few different options there. I'm going to move on because I'm going to talk about detoxification. And really, there's so much information out there about detoxification and so many different theories about how you do it and products that you can use and things you can buy to detoxify your life. And there's a bit of fluff in some of it, I reckon. I think, for the most part, I think you need to understand that your body is incredibly good at detoxing, right? So the best way you can help your body to detox, number one, is not toxifying it in the first place. So all those tips we've just talked about in our low tox living are the best way to detoxify your life, right? Is minimizing how much toxicity you're allowing in. The second best thing you can do is give your body's own detoxification processes the best chance to work to their full potential. All right. Now, one of the easiest ways you can do this is just by drinking lots of water. All right. So make sure you're drinking lots of water. Make sure you're really hydrated, and that's going to help your body flush out as much of that toxicity as possible. Okay. Number 2 is sleep and rest. Okay. Is make sure you're getting enough sleep. Now, obviously, I've got a 2-year-old in the house at the moment, so I understand that sometimes in your life it's harder than others. However, the more you can enable that to happen, the more you can make time for sleep and prioritize sleep, then the better you're going to go in terms of detoxification. And even if you're not asleep, hey guys, welcome back. And hey Summer, good to see you. Thank you, Rahani, for letting me know that you can hear me okay. That's great. I don't know how to make those comments come up, but I just kind of click things and all of a sudden they come back again. So I'm going to have to learn how the comments work at some stage, but that's all right. I'm learning as we go along. So drinking water, sleeping and resting. Interesting, Rahani. Rahani's actually mentioned fasting as a way to do it. And I think that's actually probably a good call. It wasn't actually one of my 6 on the list, Rahani. So, but I would probably actually, now that you've mentioned it, I would probably add that on as a number 7, right? Because fasting does give your body a chance to detox, right? It gives your digestive system a rest. It gives your nervous system a rest. It allows your body to start practicing what's called autophagy, where it can actually remove and detoxify some cells that aren't functioning as well as they should be. And so I would agree that that is a good way to allow your body to detoxify. It also helps with your gut health. It helps your gut lining heal, which is also important in terms of not toxifying and detoxifying, as is probiotics, which is my number 3, right? So making sure you're getting some good probiotics in, whether that's through your foods and your fermented foods or your supplementation. You're helping to restore that natural microbiome in your body, which is in many ways destroyed by our modern lives. Number 4 is magnesium. Now, obviously, magnesium is a really good detoxifier in your body, whether you're consuming that with things like leafy greens and nuts, or using it, for example, as magnesium salts in a magnesium salt spray or a bath or something of that nature. That can be a great way to assist that detoxification process in your body. Exercise is number 5, right? Getting a good sweat on, getting your body moving, getting your lymphatic system flowing is going to help your body detoxify. And then number 6 is chiropractic care, right? So making sure that your spine is working well, that you've got no interference to your nervous system, and so that your body is, and all of your detoxification pathways in your body are being adequately controlled and regulated by your nervous system, but the master control system, that master detoxifier in your body, is going to really help. So I'm a big fan of chiropractic, as you can probably guess, but I think that can be a really important part of not necessarily detoxifying your body, but removing interference from your body so that your body can detoxify itself, because I think that's the real key here. So those are my 6 tips for detoxification. Drink water, get some sleep and rest, have some probiotics, have some magnesium salts, get some exercise, get some chiropractic, and as Rahani mentioned, you may want to add in some fasting there as well. So that's my tips, guys. That's my 18 tips for a low tox life and my 6 tips for detoxification. Let me know what you thought. Did those all make sense to you? Had you heard them all before, or were there some new ones that came in there as well? Rahani's mentioned yoga and breath work, and yeah, I think that can probably be a combination of the rest, and rest can be passive rest or active rest. And I would think of often yoga and breath work as more of an active rest in terms of de-stressing your body, but also the movement and the exercise component of that I think can be really beneficial. And the lymphatic drainage that comes with that, and the, as I said, the sweating that comes with that can be really beneficial as well. So I think you definitely add those in. Absolutely. Has anyone got any questions before I go? Once again, if you're listening to this on replay, then by all means jump in and ask whatever questions you like in my Healthy Lifestyle Choices group. Rahani says she knew 90% of the list. I'm actually pretty happy with that, Rahani. I'll give you 10% new stuff. I reckon that's awesome. And 90% reminders of stuff. And I'm sure there's 1 or 2 things there where you sort of thought, oh, yeah, I could do that better. If you're anything like me, at least, that would be true. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's a good combo. If we're getting 90% reminders and 10% new stuff, then you're probably doing pretty well. And it's great that you're here because you can always find that extra 10% which you can do better as well. So I'm going to love you guys and leave you for tonight. Thank you for joining me for my Low Tox Living event. I am going to be back later this month doing another live, which I'll start promoting in the next week or so, which is going to be all about workplace ergonomics, right? So setting yourself up for work so that you're not de-stressing your body, so you're not causing injuries and insults and stresses to your body, and so you're not creating interference to your dysfunction in your spine and interference to your nervous system that might be affecting the rest of your health as well. So stay tuned for that one coming up in a couple of weeks' time. Once again, the best way, if you want to get hold of that, is to be in that Healthy Lifestyle Choices group. I'll see if I can I'll stick the link here into the chat again. Join me in that Healthy Lifestyle Choices group, because that's where you'll get all of the reminders about all of the upcoming events that I'm doing, and that's where I'm going to share lots of great health and wellness information. But otherwise, I'm going to love you guys and leave you. Have a great evening, and I'll look forward to speaking to you soon. See ya.